It is the evening of Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. This is Hometown Huddle, your home for all Ohio Valley High School sports talk. I'm your host, Drake Watson. We've got a lot to get into tonight, so let's get started.
All the way to the house, and it's going to be a St. Clairsville touchdown. First play of the game. Hello, touchdown Huskies. Wide open, touchdown Ohio Valley.
Wanted to start this evening by giving you an update on some things that have come out over the last week since you and I have last spoken regarding high school athletics as a whole this fall season in the Ohio Valley. First of all, Eli Sancombe, the basketball player for Wheeling Central. That's a Wheeling Central team that was a state champion a year ago. Eli was the West Virginia Gatorade Player of the Year for boys basketball. He is committed. He's going to Liberty to play basketball. He'll be getting some Conference USA action, so we're excited for Eli and a soon-to-be Flame. So good stuff coming out of Wheeling. Monroe Central girls golf team wins the OVGL, the Ohio Valley Golf League. They are champions of that. Congratulations to them. And on not so much of a bright note, Youngstown Ursuline. We talked about them a good bit with their game against Steubenville, and I meant to tell you as we were talking about that game that, I meant to bring up the conversation of how much does the outside noise play, how much of a factor does that play in their game against Steubenville? Obviously, it must not have meant a lot. They crushed Big Red, but now their season is crushed. Ursuline cancels their entire football season due to things that, frankly, I don't know enough about to be speaking about in a definitive way. I do know that the OHSAA came out and said that anybody on the football team of Ursuline, that if they were to transfer to another school this season, they would be ineligible for the remainder of the football season. Is the way that I read that. Which it is my understanding that is a direct reflection of the OHSAA bylaw. Whichever one states that covers the transfer situation. I think many folks up in Youngstown were looking for an exception to that, so the OHSAA kind of stayed true to what the rule book says, frankly, and a lot of folks thought that maybe they would grant them some sort of waiver, or there was obviously a certain circumstance. Their football season got canceled, so maybe they could transfer. That's not the case as it stands right now on September 17th. So obviously, Youngstown Ursuline in the midst of lawsuits, investigations, as I said, many things that I'm not going to touch on a lot because I don't know all the details of. I don't know that many know all the details of, and to be respectful of, it's actually a very serious situation if you read into it. So to be respectful of everybody involved, I don't want to speak on that as if I know more than I do. So just some quick things to touch on before we get started on. Obviously, high school football takes center stage this time of year, but just a few things to touch on before we get started on that. But on the note of high school football, it is time now for our IVC Spotlight. This is where we shine the light on anything regarding the IVC, the Inter-Valley Conference. As I said last week, as we dove into that and looked at some of their football teams and the things going on up there in the IVC, kind of on the northwestern border of the Ohio Valley as I see it. How about we're going to take a look at the Claymont Mustangs. Why? They're 3-1. Okay, as somebody might say, many teams are 3-1. There's a whole bunch of 3-1 teams, and it's after week 4, there's nothing special about it. Well, go ask the Mustangs if there's something special about it, because you look at the last few years, they've only won 10 games in the last 7 seasons. That's accompanied by 57 losses. So anytime you're a program that has not gotten off to a hot start and certainly never got hot at any point throughout the season, if you're averaging just barely over one win a season, definitely a big achievement for Claymont. And I don't think it's going to stop there. I think if you look at their schedule, they have the potential to go 6-4, which should put them on the bubble of the playoffs. Obviously, with the 12th team, they're in Region 17. Let's take a look at some of their scores so far this season. Obviously, just down the road, they defeated Harrison Central 34-14. The Huskies 0-4. They lost to a 4-0 Smithville 27-12. Then they defeated a 3-1 Fairless team, 7-6, and they beat Marietta, who is 0-4, but they beat them 12-0. They pitched a shutout. I think when you look at those final scores, my mind goes to, I see a game in which they scored 7 points in one. I see a game where they scored 12 points and won. And in those games, they gave up 6 and nothing, respectively. So on average throughout this season, they're giving up just under 12 points a game. Really good defensively so far. Offensively, it's been a slow start, I guess. Just over 16 points a game the Mustangs are averaging. So if their offense can catch up to the level that their defense is playing at right now, I think that could be a scary team. I think for them to go 6-4, obviously they're wanting to win every other game that's on their schedule. Going to be a little tough when they've got a defending state champion on that schedule. This week they go to Newcomerstown. I think that one is likely a win. You kind of look at this in terms of the election map, I guess. I have that one as a win or a toss-up, somewhere between there. I think Garraway is going to be a tough game. I think they dropped that one. Tusky Valley should be a win. At Sandy Valley should be a win. Ridgewood's going to be a tough one. I have that as probably a loss. Again, this is just me just projecting very, very loosely in my mind. And they go to Indian Valley to close the season on a Thursday night. I think that one's going to be tough. I think the state champs get the best of Claymont. But that's a Thursday night, October 23rd. I believe I have a flight the next morning, but I don't think there's going to be anything that will stop us from going to that game. I have been eager to see Grady Kinsey and company up at Indian Valley and watch them in action. Of course, Kinsey's the guy who ran all over several teams. St. Clairsville in last year's playoffs. Steubenville, just a few weeks ago, committed to Air Force, the running back from Indian Valley. So Claymont playing at Indian Valley. Good Tuscarawas County battle. And I think that's a game that, obviously, we're looking way ahead, but that's a game that we could very easily be at. And if they can, what's important about that 6-4 number, not only when you look at the rest of their games, not only is 6-4 what anyone would project them to go, just kind of mapping out wins and losses throughout the rest of the season, but 6-4 we think could probably most likely put them in the playoffs. I would say somewhere in that 9-12 range, if we had to guess. And that means that is their first playoff appearance since 1992. And that means that is their second playoff appearance all time as a school that has been playing football since 1965. So when we talk about Claymont being 3-1 and somebody who may not know anything about football in the Ohio Valley, we have some of those folks watching, and thank you for doing so. But 3-1 is a great start for the Mustangs of Claymont. Great for Buddy White, their head coach, in their second season. They're actually sitting at number 7 right now in the playoff ratings. So if they can, again, as we said, take care of the things that they should take care of and win the games they're supposed to win, I think we could see a successful season for the Mustangs of Claymont. So that's a little dive into what we're seeing from the Mustangs on the gridiron. Got to stay hydrated. It is still too warm for my liking this time of year. The leaves are starting to change color though, and that is good. All right, let's jump now to our Buckeye 8 breakdown. This is where we take a look at the scores of every team in the Buckeye 8 as it will exist in 2026. So again, not all of these schools are currently in the Buckeye 8. Barnesville is included in that. And so we just want to get out ahead of things and look at what the Buckeye 8 is going to look like in 2026 and just start speaking about it in those terms. So in no particular order other than maybe on a map, the counties maybe go north to south in some way, but no order here in particular. So Beaver Local is now 3-1. And by the way, we're going to get to our Buckeye 8 rankings. Those have been updated since last week. We'll try to do that every week, and we'll see where some of these teams have moved. So Beaver Local gets the win 21-12 against East Liverpool, their crosstown rival. Again, as we said, it's like 6 miles as the crow flies between Beaver Local and East Liverpool. Big rivalry game, close game. Beaver Local gets the win. Next up, they travel to Salem. They're not expected to win that game. Not my words, but other people's, and we'll have more to say about that a little bit later as well. When Beaver Local travels to Salem, some say, again, it's the Fantastic 50 site. Good stuff on there. You can read into, obviously, playoff projections, predictions for the outcome of certain games, actually all games that include Ohio teams, and resume statistics. It's great stuff over there. So that site has Beaver Local losing to Salem by 26, and there have been times where I have disagreed with what that number is, and I have been right. There, more notoriously around here, have been times where I disagreed with that number and I was completely wrong. Maybe with Beaver Local last week when the number on St. Clairsville was large, and so was the actual margin when I didn't think it would be that way. East Liverpool drops to 1-3. Obviously, we just mentioned they lost at Beaver Local 21-12. They go to St. Clairsville next. The Fantastic 50 site says this should be a 31-point win for St. Clairsville. East Liverpool, Beaver Local. If they can do the things that we talk about a lot of times with teams that are struggling to get wins, teams like Brook, teams like Cambridge, we say every week, do what you can control and play mistake-free football, take advantage of your opportunities, allow the opponent to help you out. Those are just, that is the very loose recipe for an upset, for a team that's not expected to win a game against a much better opponent. Buckeye Local also 1-3. They lost 56-0 at Barnesville. I don't think there's anything to learn from that game. I think that is what many of us were expecting in that game. So we're going to continue to keep our eye on Buckeye Local and see what they can do, particularly against comparable competition throughout the rest of the season. They've got Carrick from Pennsylvania next up. Indian Creek, one of two undefeated teams in the Buckeye 8 in the 2026 Buckeye 8. 4-0, they defeated Weirton as we expected them to, 46-22. They host Brook, should win that game. Harrison Central drops to 0-4, first 0-4 start for the Huskies since 2004. Looking to get back on track. They lost 28-3 against Union Local just down the road in Cadiz, and that is now the third game this season that they have led and subsequently lost. The difference is they led 3-0 in the first half, in the first quarter, I believe, and then once Union Local started scoring, they never stopped. And I think that score is slightly deceiving. Just one of those touchdowns was really late, but for some reason, I think without watching the game, a 28-3 win looks, for whatever reason, far more impressive than a 21-3 win. I'm not sure why that is. I also think Harrison was a play or two away from making that 21-10 or 21-6, and obviously they would still lose, but we would be having a much different discussion. We talk about them getting back on track. I think they should do that this Friday. I'll have the game on HCTV when North High School from Akron, the Vikings, come to town. Harrison's expected to win that one by nearly 3 touchdowns, but again, we take all of that with a grain of salt, and we'll see what kind of product the Huskies can put on the field, and we'll see what kind of athletes the Vikings have, because they can definitely, from what I've seen and what I've heard about them this season, they've got some skilled players at the skill positions. Brook is now 1-2, obviously in West Virginia, a week behind right now. They did defeat Cambridge on the road 24-14. We talked about that last week as being this battle of winless teams, and Brook came out on top. I think for Cambridge, who we'll talk about next, something to look forward to. I shouldn't say maybe something to look forward to, but when you lose a game by just 10 points, and you compare that to the rest of the season when the margins have been much larger than that, I think you can look back and see that you definitely did do some things right. Brook travels to Indian Creek next, where they are not expected to win. We'll keep it at that. And Cambridge travels to Bel Air. Likewise, they're not expected to win that game either. Barnesville, our other undefeated team in the Buckeye 8, they are up to 4-0. Just like we said with Buckeye Local, we didn't expect really anything different than what actually happened in Barnesville on Friday night. 56-0, the Shamrocks got the win. They travel to Monroe Central. They're expected to win that game. They're going to be expected to win every game, so it's very important that they continue to do the things that a dominant football team does and win the games that you're supposed to win. And not that this is a quality of a dominant football team, but if they can stay healthy, that helps them remain dominant, right? So if they're up by 30-some points in the second half, then obviously a running clock helps with that, but getting the younger guys some reps. What does that also do? Takes the load off of your starters and gets those guys ready for action in a couple of years when they're the upperclassmen that have to lead the team. Bel Air is 2-2 with a loss 34-26 against John Marshall. We talked about that game being potentially a close game last week, and it was. Bel Air looks to rebound when they host Cambridge on Friday. I believe they will, but again, anything can happen, and maybe for the sake of us not being predictive, as we always say around here, maybe I'll just throw out the idea that Cambridge can win that game. So I do expect Bel Air to win the game, but if Cambridge wins, then I will take that 2-second clip of me saying that, and we will put that everywhere to try to make ourselves look much smarter than we actually are around here. Speaking of being smart, this is a good time to talk about this. I've got the Ferry game to talk about next. This is not to take the blame off of me and put it on other people, but I figured I owe a little bit of an explanation for a couple of things. We'll start with Beaver Local. Somebody who watches more high school football than me, so I think they have some credibility, told me that they expected Beaver Local to beat St. Clairsville. No, it's not like I said that was their prediction. I didn't necessarily make the same prediction, but I predicted to be close. I told you last week I was biased because I was going to call the game for radio, and you never want to call a blowout. Ask Joe Buck how that feels. But somebody else told me that, and then it was my mishap that I came on here and said some things that I was a little too confident in. Likewise with Ferry and Edison. So I talked back in July about how Martins Ferry and Edison could be one of the biggest games of the season, thought it could be close, thought the teams would be comparable in terms of how good the teams were. And I actually figured because Martins Ferry was losing so much production, and Edison, I went through their roster and saw names of guys that I remember from 2 years ago. So I diagnosed Edison as a team that had a lot of talent coming back and an experienced team. And I don't know if I said it on the show or not, but I felt like back in July, I would have given the edge to Edison at that point in time. But then somebody who watches far more high school football than me said, I think Martins Ferry is better than Edison. They should probably win that game. That still may be true, and Ferry could have just had a bad day. But Edison definitely got the best of the Purple Riders in Martins Ferry. A stinging 48-20 home loss for the Purple Riders. And one of the touchdowns for Martins Ferry was a trick play. So you think, wow, they needed a trick play to avoid losing by 35. That's not obviously the reality of how things went when you look at it that way, but that's just a fun way to say that that thing could have been a lot worse, and Edison definitely played really well to go on the road and defeat Martins Ferry. And we continue to look forward to that Edison and Indian Creek showdown at the end of the year and many other games as well. So Martins Ferry drops to 2-2. They travel to Lucas next. They are expected to win a close game, so we will see what happens in that one. But looking forward to seeing how the Purple Riders and Justin Kropka's squad can rebound after the home loss. St. Clairsville up to 3-1 with a 24-14 win against Lindsley at Red Devil Stadium. They host East Liverpool next. We already said they are expected to win that game. It's Galloway had a late field goal to effectively seal the win for St. Clairsville, so good stuff for the Red Devils. Union Local improves up to 2-2. As we said, they got the win 28-3 at Harrison Central, and they play host to Warren out of Vincent on Friday night, and they're expected to win that game by about a couple of touchdowns. Again, when we say expected to win, expected to lose this many points, we're certainly not talking about our predictions because we don't make predictions around here. And although it may sound like it, and that's probably my job to make it not sound like that, but we are reflecting the Fantastic 50, which again I believe to be the second biggest and most popular website on the entire internet dedicated to Ohio high school football. Good stuff, and it's interesting and entertaining to look at the projections that Drew Pastor puts out. Just a wizard with the kind of knowledge he has in anything regarding numbers. Doing a great job up there at Worcester. Okay, we've got a few more things to talk about tonight. This is a somewhat it's going to be somewhat of an accelerated episode of Hometown Huddle. Got other things to get to, but before we do that, we will take a break, and I will come back. We will rattle off scores and schedules in a very up-tempo way of every other team around the Ohio Valley. I've got the Buckeye 8 rankings coming back, who moved where and what happened around the Buckeye 8, and then we've got some games that we're taking a closer look at for this weekend. So I'll come right back, and we'll have more on Hometown Huddle after this. Hey, quick timeout. Little stoppage in the action. I wanted to ask you, are you subscribed to the channel, following the Facebook page, 5 stars on the podcast format? If not, that's all we need you to do. That's all it takes. Just one press of a button and you help us out immensely and help us deliver great content to you. Also, sponsorship packages are now available. You want your company's logo on Hometown Huddle and join us? Hit us up. Email drakewatson@harcomedia.com for more information about sponsorship packages. And with that, back to the show. DrakeWatson@harcomedia.com is the email you can hit up for information on sponsorships if you want to get involved and insert yourself into the huddle, I guess, figuratively speaking, around here. Speaking of huddle, we've got the No Huddle segment coming up for you, where we, as we say, rattle off the scores and schedules of all the other teams around the Ohio Valley. First up, Oak Glen, a 43-0 win over Belpre. Oak Glen is very much improved compared to what they've been, especially last season. TJ Miller has done a great job, and don't look now, but the Golden Bears are 3-0. But don't look now, their opponent is 4-0. We've got a monster of a game coming up this weekend. Toronto 4-0 at Oak Glen 3-0 should be a good one. Weirton lost 46-22 against Indian Creek. They have a bye week. Edison, as we said, defeated Martins Ferry 48-20 on the road. They go to Caldwell. Steubenville, a thriller, 27-24 win in overtime against Cardinal Mooney. They really needed that. Such a sigh of relief. I think we could all feel the sigh of relief from Harding Stadium and from Jefferson County when they were able to score that walk-off touchdown and defeat Cardinal Mooney, because it was looking, and it was maybe feeling more so than looking, bleak up there for a while when they got off to that 0-2 start, and then you see that you're staring down your next opponent, and it's Cardinal Mooney. They go to Lindsley next up. I'm not saying that they've also got Dover to play. They still have Wheeling Park to play. We'll see how good those teams end up being, and they've got several out-of-state opponents. When you think about the Lindsley game with Steubenville coming up this weekend, I'm not saying it should be a close game. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a big win for Big Red. But if we look at the results this season, especially for Steubenville, again, we've got one close win in overtime and 2 blowout losses. 2 really good teams, but 2 blowout losses. And that tells me they're not as overpowered as they normally are. They're not just running through their schedule, and they play a good schedule every year as well. So not to take anything away from that. And Lindsley gave St. Clairsville a good game last week. We talked about Lindsley fell by just 10 points, and 3 of those 10 points coming in the last seconds to really put the game on ice. So I don't necessarily think it'll be a close game between Steubenville and Lindsley, but if it is, I wouldn't be surprised either way. Steubenville Catholic Central defeated Bridgeport on the Saturday night game, 22-13. They host Wheeling Central Catholic this Saturday on the 20th. Toronto defeated Newcomerstown 26-16. They go to Oak Glen, as we just talked about. Conotton Valley lost 34-22 against Strasburg. They go to Brownsville. Buckeye Trail lost 28-8, an 0-4 rough start for Buckeye Trail. They lost 28-8 at Shenandoah. They host Indian Valley. So I don't know that you can blame me for saying Buckeye Trail likely to start 0-5, but we'll see what they can do against the defending state champs in Division 4. Bridgeport lost at Steubenville Catholic Central 22-13. They travel to Magnolia, going down to New Martinsville on Friday night. Shadyside defeated Frontier 13-6. They travel to Notre Dame in Portsmouth on Saturday. Lindsley, as we said, lost 24-14 at St. Clairsville. They host Steubenville. Wheeling Central Catholic defeated Williamstown on the road 47-19. They travel to Steubenville Catholic Central. Cameron defeated St. Mary's 40-2. A safety. They travel to River on a Thursday night. That one could get intriguing. I may or may not be at that game. We will see, and if we are, we will certainly let you know. This is a great opportunity for me to tell you to check in with the social accounts, the Instagram, the Twitter, the whatever is on the bottom of the screen right now. We're on all of those and active on all of those. Also, I hadn't personally told you tonight, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's all we really ask you to do outside of just watching the show. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, anybody who you think would enjoy high school athletics content in the Ohio Valley. We try to do our job, and we ask that you not necessarily do your job. It's really a favor for us if you were to do those things, and we would be very appreciative if you were to do that and help us out. John Marshall defeated Bel Air 34-26. They go to Parkersburg South, who is winless as well. Monroe Central lost at Caldwell 41-0. They host Barnesville, and River defeated Magnolia 8 minutes across the river, 42-0, and they host Cameron on Thursday night. So that is a look at the scores and schedules of the rest of the teams that we talk about here on this show. About 25 minutes in, it's time now for our Buckeye 8 rankings. They are on the screen now. They are on the right side of the screen. They better be on the screen now. If not, that wouldn't be cool. So, as I'm thinking about this throughout the week, we put St. Clairsville ahead of Barnesville last week. You can see St. Clairsville and Barnesville are tied at number 1. Barnesville's 4-0, St. Clairsville's 3-1. Now, Barnesville is listed first. That means nothing other than the fact that the letter B appears before the letter S in the alphabet, so they're listed alphabetically there. They're tied at 1. That does mean Barnesville has moved up a place. That does mean St. Clairsville has not moved. I think we underestimated the resume of Barnesville and thus far, and maybe slightly overestimated the resume of St. Clairsville. I think, again, a great tool to use is Drew Paster's Fantastic 50 site. I tell you all the time to go check it out, and maybe don't check it out after 10 o'clock at night. Like when you're laying in bed and you're winding down for the night, don't go to this site. You will not go to bed until 3 in the morning. There's a couple other sites that are like that as well regarding high school football. But I think the best win for Barnesville so far has to be Fort Fry, who is 3-1 and has done really well. Fort Fry's resume, according to that site, is better than the resume of a 2-2 Norwayne team that St. Clairsville lost to on the road. And naturally, so that is kind of me taking you through my mind as to why I felt that even if we don't bump St. Clairsville to 2, I still think Barnesville ought to be at number 1. In the Buckeye 8, I don't think you can argue with that. And then on top of that, just kind of the surface level thinking that Barnesville is 4-0 and St. Clairsville is 3-1. The logic that I had used last week, this is probably a much better way to say this. The logic I used last week is, okay, St. Clairsville's 3-1, Barnesville's 4-0. Last week would have been 2-1 and 3-0. But Barnesville hadn't played a Norwayne yet, right? They didn't go on the road and defeat a Norwayne. Well, then you got to thinking about it, and they beat Fort Fry badly. And Fort Fry, thus far, is looking like potentially a better team than Norwayne. It's all hypothetical, and it's all strength of schedule and those things, but that is a roundabout way for me to say that Barnesville and St. Clairsville are tied at 1. Indian Creek at 3-1. They remain at number 3. No change there. Union Local jumps up after their win over Harrison Central. They jump to number 4. They leapfrog Martins Ferry, who goes down a spot, so those teams just flopped. Union Local with the win over Harrison Central, and Martins Ferry with the big loss to Edison. And I think there's a conversation to be had as far as Martins Ferry and Beaver Local. I think on Beaver Local's best day, they may be a better team than Martins Ferry. That might take them getting Martins Ferry on Ferry's worst day. But when you're talking about hypothetical matchups like this, it's very, very difficult to kind of project those things. So for the time being, we've got Martins Ferry still at 5 ahead of Beaver Local. But Beaver Local does jump up to number 6 ahead of Bel Air. Those teams flipped. Beaver Local defeated East Liverpool, who didn't move, and Bel Air fell to John Marshall. So the reason for the drop there for Bel Air. So, and again, this has nothing to do. This isn't standings. This isn't even the conference membership that is in place today. This is the alignment for next season. So just an exercise that we do on this show to take a look at, like, what do we think are the what do we think are the best teams? And when they do go to this alignment next season, it's going to be big school and small school. And football in high school is not a sport where, you play your conference championships and then you go into the playoffs like you would in the college game, right? So we will never see, and obviously it was designed like this, we'll never see the top small school against the top big school. And even if it was North and South, we would never have that game anyway. So maybe we can crown a number one Buckeye 8 team. What's going to be tough about that is I just have this weird feeling that by the end of the year, I think those same 3 teams are going to be close to the top of the rankings. But that's a look at how we see it. If you disagree, let's see here. If you disagree, you shouldn't, because these are objectively correct. Why? Because I came up with them. Pretty good reasoning. But if you do disagree, if you choose to be that bold, I simply ask that you explain what you disagree with and why. Utilize the reply in the comment section on all of those things, and tell me how you would rank the teams. Not because it's a prove it, like how would you do it? You're not willing to do it. No, I certainly believe that viewers are willing to do that, and I may end up being educated if you were to do that. That's the conversational part of this show that we try to have around here at Hometown Huddle. So that's our Buckeye rankings. If you have your own different rankings, be sure to let us know of that, and we can discuss that on next week's show, because you could talk me out of ranking them the way that I have, or into ranking them another way. So that's our Buckeye 8 rankings. All right, we've talked a lot about stuff that has happened in the past, and in the past could mean anything from, well, we're not going to go, that wouldn't have made any sense, but we talked a lot about last week is the better thing to say. Let's talk about this upcoming week and the high school football games that will be taking place. Where do we want to start here? I talked to you about Steubenville and Lindsley again. This one's at Lindsley. This is a game that I can see, and again, this is not me just, taking the easy way out. I could genuinely see it going either way. Either way meaning a close game or a big Steubenville win is what either way means in that situation. Again, I wouldn't be shocked if it's a big win for Steubenville, but if Lindsley makes it close or somehow pulls off the upset, I would almost instantly have a feeling as to why, because of the things that both of those teams have displayed so far this season. How about Bridgeport? They go to Magnolia. They go down to New Martinsville, and they take on Magnolia. Bridgeport's 1-3. Magnolia is winless. 2 smaller schools. Those, for whatever reason, always tend to breed some of the best games in the Ohio Valley. So looking for a good one between Bridgeport and Magnolia. The Blue Eagles playing host to the Bulldogs. We talked about a battle of unbeatens. Toronto 4-0 at Oak Glen 3-0. I'm not going to say or predict whether or not it's a big win for the Golden Bears, a close win for them, close win for Toronto, or a big win for Toronto. I'm not saying what kind of feel I have on the game at all, but I'm just interested to see, especially because of Oak Glen. You got to remember, they were 1-9 last season, and TJ Miller in year 1 has already taken them to 3-0. If they can beat Toronto, there's always that underlying thought that we have about the comparison between the quality of ball in West Virginia and Ohio. So if we see Oak Glen defeat Toronto, that will, I think our eyebrows are already halfway raised because of what Oak Glen has been able to do to start the season so far. But that would really raise the eyebrows if they were able to defeat a 4-0 Toronto team. And then University travels to Wheeling Park, a battle of some big schools, and that could be a big game as well. That's our show for this evening. Wanted to run a little bit of an abbreviated version of the show this week because of some things that we've got to take care of around here. But one last thing to talk to you about before we do get out of here. We say this all the time, and the reason we say it all the time is very unfortunate. But we make a big deal out of sports around here. But you and I know very well that is never what matters most. That's nowhere near comparable to life or death, something as serious as that. There's folks around here in Harrison County who are grieving, who are heartbroken. And if they happen to be listening, they know who they are. The community, while maybe not to the same extent, The community is also heartbroken and saddened, and we at Harco Media would like to offer our deepest sympathies, and our thoughts are with that family and the entire community. Rough times, and we want to make it known that we are aware that those kind of circumstances supersede everything that we talk about around here. And we say that because anybody who's an avid sports fan, or really an enthusiast about anything, gets super fired up and talks about these things in such a passionate way. And it's no secret that that's nowhere near, the top of priorities, but we just want to make sure that we reiterate that anytime a family or a community is going through something as rough as some of them are, we recognize that that doesn't take a back seat to what we talk about around here. So we want to make sure that we offer our thoughts with families and communities who are going through a rough time, and that's no different here around Harrison County over this last week, and really just genuinely throughout the country. To be blunt about it. So that's all we've got for this evening's show. I won't see you, but you'll see me as we probably shouldn't say it that way. We will be back here at 9 p.m. as always on Wednesday night on September 24th. For everybody at Harco Media, I'm Drake Watson saying have a great night, and I'll see you next week.